Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Black Heart, signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit that share button because the message is more important than the messenger is. And this message is in response to another YouTuber's charge about colorism. And he rightly brings up that colorism is aimed largely at lighter skinned men in the community. And I would say that that is true. When you're a child, colorism is largely aimed at darker skinned women. When we grow up, it becomes re-aimed largely at lighter skinned men, and it's largely in the form of jokes. This YouTuber said that lighter skinned people need to marry each other more. There's nothing wrong with that. And there is something odd about the fact that there is no community of lighter skinned people where you just see lighter skinned people together and marrying and having kids, and the kids marry each other in the next generation. There were attempts at this, and I want to clarify that misconception. There were attempts at this. Some Creoles tried it, others were against it. The ones who were against it were not really identified as Creoles anyway, so people don't know that actually the Creole community was split about this. But they were against it, and for it, and neutral. There was the Blue Vein Society, which ironically was not in Creole areas of the United States. And they didn't necessarily tell each other about each other. They kept that a secret. They didn't tell everyone else about each other, so they kept each other's identities a secret. So that being said, I want to point this out though. Number one, it doesn't matter if light-skinned people marry each other or not. What does matter is that they have the option to marry or not to each other. But the other thing too is this: the YouTuber is a male, and unfortunately his voice cracks, and I think it's just the audio itself, but his voice seems to crack when he's recording. That feeds into the stereotype that the light-skinned man is weak and he's a wimp. So when he addresses colorism, he's a crybaby. I don't think this man would be that. I don't think he'll be dumb enough to have his voice crack while he's talking. I really do think it's just the quality of the audio recording as it plays back, because he himself addresses that stereotype. So he would obviously have no reason to feed into it. However, I can understand that this YouTuber is young. He came up at a time after the pendulum swung the other way. So he does not remember what it was like beforehand. He does not remember the colorism of the 70s and 80s, wherein the paler shade was favored, although there were still many women that wanted a so-called real man, and darker men were seen as that. The stereotypes existed from a long time before we actually openly said these are the stereotypes. He's not aware of the time when, yes, light-skinned men were preferred, and that's why Prince was able to get away with lying and conking his hair and hitting those high-pitched notes. He doesn't remember those days. I remember them, but they vanished as soon as I got old enough for it to work in my favor. The thing is this: it is not the paler men of the black community that are saying we won't marry light-skinned women. That's not it. It is the paler women of the community, and sometimes more chocolate sisters, but definitely the paler women of the community, saying they will not marry a light-skinned man. This is universal. This is not only among black Americans. There are medium shades in between that women of various black nationalities don't mind in men. They'll take it. You can be light brown, and that's fine. But the pendulum can swing too far in that direction. In the Caribbean, the men think that I would be a hit, but island women do not look 2 times at me. Unless, of course, the island woman is one that has a complex about how ugly she is. That's what's happened in my case before. My current wife said to me, actually, that she had never thought she was going to marry a man that was not from her people. She didn't entertain it. She never considered it. She saw me and she noticed me, despite she noticed me. And she was actually shocked herself because not only had she not thought that she would be with a black man that was not from among specifically her people, but a pale-skinned black man at that. Well, she wound up with a pale-skinned black man whose hair doesn't or did not even grow out kinky when it used to grow out. I don't let it grow anymore, but that's for different reasons. So now she herself has been surprised. She's been shocked. But the thing is this, when you are a pale-skinned man, you actually have reasons to go SYSBM. I'm talking about light-skinned black men. You have reasons to go SYSBM from the very beginning, out the gate. You don't actually have to wait and try to get much experience. The attempt to get experience within the West is going to tell you why you actually should be SYSBM from the start. There will be women that actually like you and they can't admit it. And they wouldn't say anything to you because they're afraid their friends will say, "Why you talking to old light bright? Get you a real nigga." And you can see this when you're in your teens, but when you get to be an adult, although the language that her friends may use may change, the idea still remains the same. Why would she holler at you? She may actually holler at a chocolate man. She may make the approach or give the choosing signals that are just too obvious for him to miss. In your case, you get the mixed signals if she's interested. All puns intended. Chocolate brothers have every reason to go SYSBM as well because they are stereotyped in a way that does not insult their genitals, but it still gets to be insulting after a while because they're assumed to not be as responsible in other areas of life. Only good as bedbugs, and they're not limited to that. They're men. They got their strengths and weaknesses like everyone else. They've been dehumanized by white folks, and then they further get sexually dehumanized and stereotyped by sisters. Western sisters and white women, and that's not fair to them. They're not horses, they're not sex mules, they're men. And so they also have a reason. It's just that you can understand why they may become aware of the reason later in life. There is a legitimate reason that they may not know that they should be going SYSBM until they're in their 20s or their 30s. They may not understand, they really may just not know what the reason is. When you're pale, you will understand that before you get out of middle school. And if you think back to those days, if SYSBM had been a hashtag and you had the internet, you would have known at that point, would you not? Some of you listening now actually came up through the 8th grade or you came through your last year of middle school when the internet was around and you had it in your homes. And guess what? If SYSBM had been a hashtag at that point, you would have found that hashtag based on how you were treated, and you would have gone SYSBM, and you would not have even had a driver's license. Your plans would have already been set from before you could legally drive, let alone buy a weapon or vote. And you would have been looking at skills that you could have transferred abroad. Unfortunately, we just don't want to have these honest conversations about it. I'm not going to call this YouTuber's name because many of you would hear the voice cracking and you would not even consider the possibility that it was the audio playback or his recording device. It wouldn't even be considered as a possibility. However, I am going to say to him, listen, you may be young. Based on the solutions that you suggested, I think that you are. You're right to observe this issue. Keep reporting on your observations. Do not be ashamed to tailor your solutions as you see more information develop over time. But sir, you are a prime candidate to become SYSBM. Save yourself, black man. You don't need to sit and even wait on the light-skinned black women to come along and agree to give a shot to a guy like you. You don't even need to wait on her. What you need to do is consider Southeastern Asia, where it is not held against you. They actually like black men, and being light-skinned does not count against you. Consider that. If you're Muslim, look into Indonesia, Malaysia, southern Thailand, and the southern Philippines. If you're not Muslim, look into Laos, Cambodia, northern Thailand, and the northern Philippines. They're not all prostitutes over there like what white guys tend to think. No, they're not. They're actually different types of women, just like everywhere else. Look into these areas. You could look into Latin America. I don't think they have the same stereotypes there. But you're just going to have to stop waiting on Western black women to give you a shot. You can't sit and wait on them no matter what shade they are, because whatever shade they are, they want to be seen out in public with chocolate brothers, regardless of what they actually prefer internally, inside. All women prefer whatever option gives them the most social credibility and social status. And even if it's not their first preference, they still prefer the social credibility and social status, and that's what they're going to take when they're young and they're fertile. You don't want to be that guy that sits up and waits, and then when she's old, she light-skinned, but when she's old and has had other men's kids, she comes along and wants to give you a chance, but she's old, and you know somebody else got much better out of her. You don't want to be that dude. You childless, you done worked and developed, and she comes along, oh, where you been all my life? Bitch, I've been single all my life. You don't want to be that guy. You can, while you are young, have a stable family life. And in some of these places, you can be married to more than one wife legally, while you are young. Get the passport, blood. Tell Boom Shika, no matter what her shade is, it's been real, but I don't commit incest. And you get on that plane and you start your life elsewhere, and you will see what happens. And get back to us and tell us. I hope that this message is a benefit. I hope that what I've said one day in the future will no longer be true. In the meantime, I hope it helps. The blackest man on social media, signing black out. Assalamu alaikum and black male power just because she don't like it.